The following show is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose nor treat any medical condition. Any information or recommendations provided should always be discussed with your healthcare professional. Welcome to the Patient Talks. I'm Physician Assistant Frank Smith. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing influenza, the flu. We're going to be discussing symptoms, how your body's immune system responds to it, home treatments, prescriptions, and the symptoms to really watch out for. Even after 25 years in practice, I still enjoy the practice of medicine. But I won't lie, there's about a 6 to 8 week window every year that I had frankly rather pound my head against the wall. And that would be the joys of flu season. I've got about 2 months there where patients come in looking acutely ill. And if you've ever had actual influenza, you understand why. Most respiratory viral illnesses tend to have a very gradual onset. For example, rhinovirus, which causes the common cold, we've all been there. The first day or so you think, do I have allergies? And then your symptoms build and they get worse and they get worse. And then over time they slowly decline. Influenza has always been the outlier. Most bacterial infections come on instantly where you did feel well and then a couple of hours later you feel like death. The flu is the only virus that I know of off the top of my head that does the exact same thing, where you can go to work feeling completely fine that morning and by noon you're running a temperature of 102. As far as what's going on in your immune system, that cascade almost sounds like a war movie. The influenza virus comes in and it's covered in a shell that has all these little spike proteins on it. All of us are familiar with that phrase since COVID showed up. But it has these little individual spike proteins on it and it will attach to one of your own cells and it sends its genetic material into your cell and fools it into making trillions of copies of this flu virus, which explode out into your system. Each cell that gets infected infects all the other cells around it. They're producing trillions of that virus as well. Your immune system tries to mount a response. Leukocytes get involved. There are things called macrophages that try to actually eat some of the infected material. You have a cascade of chemicals that are released, including interferon, prostaglandins, all of these things to fight this flu attack. It's where your fever actually comes from, is the body's response to this infection. But the reality is your body is losing the battle this entire time. The macrophages can't keep up, leukocytes can't keep up, viruses are replicating by the trillions, and your body is failing. Meanwhile, flowing through your bloodstream since the day you were born are antibodies, and each one is unique, and it has a little different protein spike on top of it, and it flows through your body looking for something that's a match. Imagine trillions and trillions of keys flowing through your body looking for a lock. At some point, that one antibody in your bloodstream that matches that current flu infection makes contact with the flu virus. And when it docks, it recognizes that that docking has occurred, it releases, and it goes back to your spleen with a signal of, I've made contact, we need trillions of me now. And the spleen starts producing just innumerable amounts of that one particular antibody. Now, as they flow back through the bloodstream, when they come in contact with the flu virus, its outer shell, it covers up all of the protein spikes on that virus so it can no longer attach to any of your cells and the virus starts to die off. It takes about 48 to 72 hours for that one antibody to find its home, go back to the spleen, and start having trillions of antibodies be produced. And that's why your symptoms are at their absolute worst that first 2 to 3 days. When the battle is over, the number of the antibodies that fit that particular flu never go back to just one. You end up with a staggeringly high number of those antibodies circulating in your bloodstream for a long period of time. And that's why you can't get that year's flu virus again, is you already have a bunch of antibodies out there looking for it. As far as home treatment while you have the flu, a couple of things to keep in mind. One, hydration is key. Our metabolism ramps way up when our body is fighting an infection, so you need to stay well hydrated. You may not be particularly hungry, but we do need some nutrition. Grandma's chicken soup is a real thing because you're actually getting in the nutrients you need along with a large amount of fluid. But stay on top of your fluid intake. Fever, to be honest, I notice most patients tend to pull the trigger on treating a fever a little too soon. Fever is our body's immune system response to an infection. A lot of our immune cells respond better at that mildly elevated body temperature, and viral replication is somewhat slowed down. So honestly, I usually tell patients somewhere between 100 to 102, depending on how you normally have a fever. If it's under that level, let it cook. That's the body's immune system doing its job. Somewhere around 101 to 102, where you go from I feel sick to I feel well and truly ill. Now the body is getting a little too carried away and we need to treat that fever. I have had several patients ask about elderberry, which seems to be a common alternative or complementary medicine that has come up. I did some research on it and the answer falls maybe. There were some studies that show it does have some antiviral properties. There were others that showed really it didn't have any impact. But from what I've read, it doesn't interact with any other medications and there don't seem to be any contraindications to using it. So I'll tell patients if they wish to try elderberry, it falls under the heading of it won't hurt and it might help, so it may be worth considering doing. Regarding prescription treatment, there is an antiviral that is available. There are a couple of things to keep in mind on it though. One, it has to be taken within 48 hours of symptoms. Viruses aren't technically alive, so you can't kill them. All you can do is slow down their replication, and that is what the antivirals do on the flu. However, once we've gotten to about the 48-hour mark, we're at peak viral load, and so the antivirals are not going to have any impact at that point. The other thing to keep in mind, the antivirals do have a small but not insignificant side effect risk as well. Honestly, I tend to keep those available to the very young, the very old, and those that have respiratory conditions like asthma, COPD, things that put my patient at a much higher risk. As far as the symptoms to watch out for, this one's a two-parter. During the active infection, that 2 to 3 day window of feeling terrible, there is a difference between I feel really sick and I'm starting to fail. The dead giveaway on this is how fast are you breathing? Do you feel like you're getting enough air? Can you keep that fever under a relative control? If you've set your point at 101.5 and that's where you want to park it, but you can't get your fever under 104, this needs attention. You need to get in to see your clinician. If you feel like you can't stay on top of your air, you need to see your clinician. If you're unable to sleep because you feel like you're gasping for air, you need to get in to see your clinician. In these situations, an emergency department is a reasonable alternative as well. The other thing to watch out for is towards the tail end of the infection, you may start to feel better and then suddenly start to feel worse, and you may think, oh, well, I've relapsed. Probably not. What has probably happened is your body has taken such a hit fighting the flu that a secondary or opportunistic infection has come on board. This is another one. You need to see your clinician soon. Typically, these secondary infections are bacterial. It can cause pneumonia, and it's one of the leading causes of the deaths associated with the flu every year. And that's it for this week's show. That's influenza. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you've learned something. If either one of those is true, please click the like and subscribe button down below. I'll be back next week. Until then, you better make me look good. See you soon.